looking at your garden, fluffing it up so the water runs in, right? Wrong. It doesn't work that way. You rip it up in the fall and you till it in the spring and the water won't run in there because I told you why.
Porosity.
No porosity, pore space. All those little places between the soil particles, you smash them all up. Okay? When you dump another, like it's a heavy rain, we're going to dump another bottle in. For those 2 bottles now, it took 27 minutes to go away. 8 minutes, 4, and 3 minutes. So you can see no tilling, having cover crops really made a difference on a healthy soil with aggregates, porosity, and ability to absorb water, okay? So how's your pore space? This is something you can do in your garden. Do one on your garden and do one on the lawn and see what happens. See how you're doing on your garden, okay? So soil organic matter is really the most important factor. For 1 to 3% will double the water holding capacity. And I know you can just throw the hose on your garden and that, but you know, when you're a farmer and you got lots of acres and you're trying to feed livestock, we can't throw a hose on our garden, on our pastures. So we need, every rain, we need to catch it and we need to hold it there. I don't want it to run off and I don't want it to leach away. I want it to stay right there. I want it to catch in that sponge, and that's organic matter. So when I graze short with no surface residue, poor soil structure, less litter, less roots, less organic matter, I got less water. Oh, it's so dry. It's so dry. It's not so dry. You've been abusing the ground. You haven't been catching the water you get. You know, it's amazing. It's a big difference. So we talk about sunshine, water, fertility. Joe Clapperton says that 79% of the N, 65% of the P comes from the soil biological processes. Christine Jones of Australia says that most all the nutrients that your plants utilize are microbially mediated. We have this concept, here's a plant, here's the roots, and the plant roots out there suck up the P and suck up the K and take it into the plant, and that's the way it works. It really doesn't. It's the nutrients are there, but they're not available to the plant, and they're microbially changed so they're available to the plant. So just because it's in the ground doesn't mean it's available. And just think that each 1% of soil organic matter holds about $750 worth of soil nutrients. And I mean, thank goodness for all the Holmquists and all their generosity and support of this organization, but you got a lot of nutrients in your garden already. Can your plants make use of them, okay? So let me give you a quick synopsis on how this whole thing works. Most of the soil nutrients are in organic form, not available to the plant. And we actually, a lot of silt soil's got 1,000 of N, 1,000 of P, and 7,000 of K. That's how many pounds of those nutrients are already in your soil. But they're the organic form, and it might as well be a rock sitting there or a cement block. The plant can't get anything out of it because they need to be microbially mediated, okay? And those soil organisms are going to do, and they also secrete the gums and glues for the pore formation. That's how we get this aggregates, how we get the porosity. So this microbial fertility is this photosynthesis produces the carbon. Remember? Produces carbohydrates and sugars. And the plant literally leaks out of its roots up to 40% of all that carbon it produced. Which is really kind of like, wow, you're throwing all that away. That's kind of dumb. It's not dumb. It's because carbon extrudes are feeding the bacteria and the fungi, okay? And the bacteria and fungi trade water and nutrients, N, P, and K for that carbon and sugar. You got a whole barter system going on there, man. And I'm a veterinarian. I'm not a plant physiologist or anything, or a microbiologist, but all the hormones, all these things that the plant is telling the bugs, and then the bugs tell the plant, they're going back and forth, they're communicating. There's all this huge amount of trading going on. So I think Iron Mountain has this largest fungus in the world. Yeah. Okay, that's what we're talking about here. All this mycelium, all there goes through the roots and goes to the ground. It's all interconnected down there. As long as we don't rip the crap out of it every year, okay? We get our rototiller in there, you know, those little fungi. What do you think we're doing to them? We're making baby fungi out of them because we're chopping them up, all right? It doesn't work. So, and a fourth thing we did think about is diversity. Because these bugs all have their favorite plant. So if you only got one kind of plant, you only got one kind of bug. So you want different kinds of microbial life, generate more variety of nutrients, you got better soil cover, you got more green leaves, diversity in each field, and diversity across your farms. Consider perennial pasture and some annual crops. You know, this diversity. Mother Nature does it very rarely. You go out and see an abandoned field, that's one thing. Except maybe if we get like a Phragmites or an invasive species that doesn't have any natural, you know, it hasn't found its balance yet. Give it 1,000 years and Phragmites would not be taking over everything. But, you know, we don't want to wait 1,000 years, which I think is understandable. But diversity is really critical. It really keeps a balance with it. And Jim will know this. I mean, alfalfa weevil was a big thing. You put alfalfa grass mixtures. We don't have the alfalfa weevil issues that we used to have if you just have a monoculture. Then you drive down through the I states, Illinois, Indiana, and you see cornfield after cornfield after cornfield, you know. And you wonder why we don't have some bugs and why, you know, they have all these issues with this monoculture. So it's a very interconnected system between the atmosphere. We talk about a lot, CO2 today. You know, I think the federal government just came out today with a report that climate change is actually real. And hey, you know, and so that CO2 is really critical because it's important for photosynthesis, and the animals deport the carbon, and the carbon from the plants, the extra energy goes down in the ground, and the soil organic matter decomposes, gives off CO2, and actually there's this very symbiotic system that's going on here where the CO2 is produced, caught by the plant, put back in the ground. It's a real critical system. So the other thing that goes along with this is active grazing. And that's something Denise and I are really interested in because obviously grazing is real important to us. And we've actually done tests where we can take a plot of soil and we put it in a jar with a little indicator, and that indicator will change color and we can tell how much CO2 is produced. And so using that, like if you measured how much CO2 is coming out of this room and did the math, you could say, oh, there's probably 50 people in that room, you know, because we all give off so much CO2. If you got more life in your soil, you get more CO2 produced. And we can actually increase the CO2 in the soil, more microbial activity by grazing that piece of ground. So it really makes it better. Besides biting a plant stimulates growth, hoof action, the grazed animal obviously recycles dung and manure, makes those nutrients more available. So I'm just going to real quickly go through here. Something that's real dear to my heart is how to grow more pasture. There are just 3 rules that you put more animals in a smaller space for less time. Some of you go by our place and wonder, like, why do they keep moving them? They were here today and they're over there tomorrow, you know. So why do they do that? Because we increase harvest efficiency, we get less patch grazing. We don't regraze that grass. We bite it off and then we move on, and that plant can grow back. And the herd effect. We want to stress that soil life a little bit. We want to kick it in the butt. We want to exercise, man. We don't want chronic stress being eaten off every day, but we want a bunch of animals running across that piece of ground, taking a bite and crapping on it and everything else, and then moving on, and the plant says, holy smokes, I better get my rear and gear and replace all this stuff they ate. You literally get a stimulation of increased rate of growth by harvesting it, okay? So acute stress is okay. Just think of a little exercise. What we don't want is chronic stress, where you just over and over and over. And there's that herd of wildebeest with their newborn calf there. They're grazing that all off, and tomorrow they're going to be at a new place. So we looked at them one day, and the next day we had to go find them again. Now, obviously, they weren't that far away, but they were down the road a ways, or not the road. They were they were over a ways. I don't really know where we were, to tell the truth. So what's number 2? So you got to leave residual, okay? Because grass grows grass. Remember the green leaf thing there? And grazing grass grows more grass. And the soil liver cover protects the ground. We don't want to expose the ground. We want the living plant there, okay? So we want to leave some residual. And this is a little study they did down in Kentucky where they simulated continuous grazing, like they grazed it to an inch once a week for a month, and this one was cut off at 3.5 inches once a month, okay? This is what happened 6 days later. And look at how much more grass there is there. That's the same 6 days. Nobody harvested them at all, but look at how much growth we got there compared to there. So grass does grow grass. You don't want to eat it. You want to leave green leaf, right? Because green leaf does catches sunshine, creates energy, all right? The whole ball of wax. So then you want to leave a rest period, a recovery period, so that plant can grow more roots, feed the life in the soil, build reserves. And it's actually that plant, when it gets kind of a young, mature stage, not seed head and succescence like with gray hair, but I'm talking about the young, mature, you know. It's actually a better nutritional value for that animal than a real immature type plant. And here's a little study done. These plants are actually growing in a tube, and this one was cut off every 21 days, that one every 7 days, every 2 days. So where's it going to be drouthy at? Which one's going to be drouthy? That one, right? It's the same plant, same amount of water. This was just cut off every 2 days. You know? So again, are you having a drought, or is it your management that's causing it, you know? So you need that time to grow that root. So what grows is sunshine, water, fertility, and diversity. More animals, smaller space, less time, more residual, more adequate recovery. So what are some of the lessons from the Serengeti to soil? I think the natural system is really resilient. I mean, it's unbelievable how it can put up with us and bounce back, you know. Biological world is really complex. There's all these interactions. And what's really scary to me is like, okay, we got this figured out. It's like, well, if you didn't know this yesterday, are you sure you know everything now? Or you might think you might learn one thing tomorrow or the next day. You know, is there some other thing they haven't figured out yet? Which is, for my long extension career, I remember telling people this is the way you do stuff, and then about 20 years later I'm thinking, why did we tell them that? That's not a good idea, you know, and because we've learned better now, and we don't even know what we don't know yet, and that's what's really scary. There's interdependence of life. I'm not sure we'll ever understand that, how this impacts like the biting ants that affected the boring ants, that affected the beetles, you know? I mean, there's all these really complicated things, and we're part of the system. You know, we're this big over part of it. So where do you fit in? You know, if you're farmers or graze livestock, if you manage land, here's 4 cardinal rules to think about on soil health. So minimize the tillage. You don't want to destroy the microbes home. And you burn up the organic matter when you do that, okay? Keep the ground covered. You want skin on that ground. You don't want it exposed. You want some skin on there to protect it. You get into Dakotas or their place, and where you got a little litter on the ground and where you got bare ground, the bare ground may be 120 degrees and the covered ground may be 75 or 80 degrees. There's that much difference in temperature, which is frying all the bugs in the ground if it's that hot. So you leave some litter. Keep roots in the ground. How can you feed the bugs if you don't have anything to take the nutrients down there, okay? So you need living roots year-round in that ground. And you want a diversity. And I don't know, it's kind of tough maybe in a garden, but get some grazing animals on your ground, okay? So in your garden, you want to cut down on tillage, you want to use cover crops, rotate tops, build organic matter, add some manure and compost, you know? That's, you know, we've been tilling our soils, and I got it all fluffed up in that. It's like, and I'm really messing with your minds now, but really you need to rethink that whole thing. You know, how can I plant a garden and mow the grass in between and just have some dirt there for the plants and having these other things grow in between? I think we need to really rethink how we work with the soil life in the dirt, in the ground, okay? So for land managers, take-home lesson, you know, our decisions can increase or decrease the life on our farms. It's our decisions that make the difference. And if we get, the amount in diversity is going to increase the resilience. You see these places that, well, yeah, they always get a crop, you know, they always got along all right. And it's the diversity that makes a difference, okay? And it all goes back to, it's our decision how we're going to do it. So even if you just eat, which is most of you know, most of you are land managers, you, your children, your grandchildren are going to depend on living soil. Be knowledgeable about land management issues, you know, and here I just listed a few of the things we hear about. Organic versus conventional, cattle-free, GMOs, fertilizer. None of these mention soil health. You know, we're all worried about GMOs. It's like, yeah, but what about the soil health? What about organic matter in the ground? That's what we really need to be worried about. We don't even think about that. So realize the world is gray and not black and white. You know, I really get frustrated because it's about the dosage. As a veterinarian, I know that salt can be toxic. I mean, I've posted animals that have died of salt. So do you want it labeled with a skull and bones on your salt shaker on your table? Well, that's silly. Just don't eat salt, and if you take too much, drink water, and yeah, that's okay. Well, it's all about dosage. You know, I saw a thing the other day that really bugged me. It said, in baby food, they found arsenic and lead. Hallelujah. I was like, wow, what do we got? You know, nothing's safe anymore. We can get down to like points per trillion. Points per trillion. And there's a little bit of lead and a little bit of arsenic and everything. We need a little bit of that in our systems. It isn't that there's lead and arsenic there, it's how much is there makes a difference. So get away from this is good, that's bad, because most of the time that's not the case, okay? And don't be a victim of someone else's crusader product. I mean, there's people that, you know, that want to sell something, and media today is a product. So you want to be real, you want to be a real skeptical consumer, okay? Vote with your pocketbook, speak up, tell people how important living soil is. Because it is a really critical thing to our future, okay? Because if you look at lost civilizations, they first lost their soil, life. You know, they lost that topsoil, they eroded away, whether it was Rome, the mines, or whatever. You know, we should be monitoring our SOM rather than GDP. We should be monitoring our soil organic matter than GDP. I don't care about 3% GDP growth next year. I want to know what our soil organic matter is across the United States next year. Is it going up or going down? Yeah. So really, I mean, that we don't worry about too much CO2 in the air. Let's put it in the ground. That's where that's if you got more organic matter, you got more CO2 in the ground. Okay, that's what we really ought to be worrying about. So I've gone on long enough, but I really thank you for your time and considerations. I'll be happy to answer any questions, and maybe we can make a lion roar here. So thank you very much. Appreciate it. Yes, sir.
Is the amount of pasture in the United States increasing, decreasing?
The amount of pasture? It's actually probably inversely proportional to the price of corn. When corn went to $7, those pastures got plowed up left and right to be put into corn. So corn is down now, and our cow numbers are coming back up. So there's a few places going back into pasture, but it's driven by cropping. And you know, there's tons of programs for your main crops, corn and soybeans, cotton, and livestock are a whole lot of work. It's just as easy to do corn seeding, corn, soybeans, and Florida rotation. So a lot of guys go to crops. Hard to get the cows back on the land. Jim, what do you think? Do you want to monitor soil organic matter?
I think that's a great idea. I like that quote.
You like that?
We should be monitoring our soil organic matter instead of our...
Because if we have more money, what difference does it make? You know, I'm not saying we should be broke, but we need to be able to have our grandkids be able to grow food.
There's a great book. It's really a small book put out by USDA in the 1930s. It's called Soils and Men. It is a really marvelous read, and it talks about Babylonians and those civilizations in the Middle East. They were rich and populous, and they overworked they ruined their soil, and they couldn't support their population.
Exactly. One of the real crises right now is going on in Africa is education. And let me briefly explain that to you. So these Maasai people that live, you saw that village I showed you, that is literally miles and miles from anywhere. There's not a local little red schoolhouse down the road, let me tell you. And that's because the little Maasai kids, boys and girls, at 6 or 7, they go out with the baby animals, because the adult animals go out and graze a long way, so they take the baby animals out, and as they get older, there's a core of young teenagers that take the older animals out. So if they put all the kids in school, they don't have anybody to herd. That tradition's not going to go on. And it's a real conundrum. And it's like, I mean, I'm not promoting kids not be educated, but who's gonna hurt these animals down the road? And if they build fences, that's what we did, and we get all this overgrazing because people build a fence and turn the animals in there and eat everything. So fences have really been, they're really a two-edged sword, you know, and they're really great, and they've got some really empowered some poor management. So, interesting thing. Denise, I think you were going to make a comment?
Yeah, I was just going to say, if you're interested at all, you know, when Ben was talking about the kudu and the acacia and how the plant warns the plant down the road that they're being eaten, there's a really good book out there called What Plants Know, and it explains in interesting, fascinating detail how plants have senses. You know, do they hear? Can they see? No, not the way we think of it, but they do respond. And so that's a really interesting one. And there's another one called The Secret Half of Nature, which talks about your garden and the microbes in it. So there's some really good, really interesting books out there. I'm not a plant person either. I'm an English person. But they're fun to read, and it's pretty amazing, you know, the things we don't know. So.
Other questions, comments? Yes, sir.
So, traditionally, to build soil, you plant something that was a nitrogen fixture, like soy or something like that, and till it in as a green manure. Is that the wrong thing to do?
Well, no, it's not all bad. I mean, to work in those plants because you're working organic matter in. So that's good, but try to get away from this tillage thing, or even just when you do tillage. Think about your house, and if you had a tornado come through in June, well, you can live in a tent through the summer while you rebuild the house, right? You know, so when I till in the spring, those bugs got a chance, especially if I don't really tear it all up. You know, maybe I just cold pack it down or disc it once or something. You know, those plants got a chance to repair the damage. What really is hard on your soil life is you go out there in November and you fall plow everything. I mean, you just, you know, you get knocked out of your house by a tornado in November, man, it's going to be a long winter, you know. So it's when you do the tillage, and can I, you know, is there other ways we can knock that crop down? I mean, they're doing no-till, organic no-till now with their grow let cereal rye get up to where it gets in the boot stage, and Jim, correct me if I get off here a little bit, but it gets in just past the boot stage, and you knock it over, it won't regrow. So, I mean, if you knock it over when it's short, it just tries to rehead out again. But you get it to it just in a boot, and you knock it over, and you're literally planting corn in that massive knockdown rye cereal, and it won't grow back, and it covers up the ground and smothers out the weeds. So maybe you don't need to work in the ground. The other thing is, we're used to this quick fix. I mean, I dumped fertilizer on, and 3 days later, man, it was all green again. You know, just fabulous. That's the way it should work. Well, Mother Nature doesn't work that way. And I know Christine Jones will tell you, you know, if you know, you can go cold turkey on pea, but if you've been using a lot of nitrogen on your crops, you better go get off of nitrogen over a 3-4 year deal, because if you just quit, you don't have the bugs there to make up the difference. I mean, just because you quit smoking doesn't mean you don't want one tomorrow. I mean, it takes a little while, you know, to get over that, to get the bugs there so they can convert some of these things. And I'm not sure we got that all figured out how to work with nature, but yeah, so it isn't all bad. But how can we minimize tearing up the bug's house? So, turn back to you, Terry. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The lion roar.
Later, we'll finish up the meeting and I'll make it work.
Does anybody know where the lights are?